everyone, welcome to another amazing day at fmtraining.tv. My name is Margaret. I am here with the wonderful Richard and Leland Long to discuss show you new amazing things about the FileMaker platform so you can better improve your understanding, and also so we can help improve the FileMaker community because it's awesome and we should hang out. It's great. Real quick, we stream on 3 platforms. We stream on Discord, we stream on Twitch, and we stream on YouTube. We monitor all of those, so please ask questions. We will get to them, and I will forward them on to the presenter and get them answered for you if I can. So, please talk to us. We love hearing back and forth from you guys. Real quick, were you going to say something?
No, you're doing great. Keep going.
Okay, you took like a breath, like you're about to say something. I was like, I don't. Real quick, we have our live training schedule of wonder and joy. So today we are with, again, the amazing Mr. Leland Long, and he's going to discuss JavaScript and why you shouldn't be scared of it. About FileMaker certification and in server specifically.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. Yep.
Going to be FM Workmate again with the wonderful Mr. Watson. Layout analysis specifically, so that should be fun. Friday is an open server Q&A with Jacob Taylor. So if you miss Jacob Taylor, you've got problems with some server somewhere, and you're like, my command line isn't working. Command line, blah. That's going to be the day to ask questions. Monday and Tuesday is also Jacob Taylor. It's about Azure. So Azure. Excuse me.
Azure. At least I think that's how they say it, yeah.
Well, I'm probably not the person to ask for pronunciation. So that should also be very interesting. So look forward to that. If you decide you're like, oh, these are all like really cool ideas, but I need to like have this and this and this answered. If you're like, I don't really like, the back and forth. I need like, to be focused. Or if you just want to support our channel, since we do this for free 5 days a week, feel free to get our annual training subscription. It is 100+ hours of video content, 10 to like 15 to 20-minute segments on everything FileMaker, from Pro to Server to Go, WebDirect. You talk about it, you name it, we talk about it. It is done in Richard's very dynamic teaching style, so I promise you won't get bored. It's not going to be like someone joining on go like this and this.
If you fall asleep, we'll give you your money back. Cool. So today is a very exciting day. I could try to turn on my video camera and see if that works for you, Margaret. Hey, can you see me okay there?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so today is a very exciting day. We have Leland Long. I've been trying to get him on the show for a long time. In fact, Leland's been kicking around the idea of doing a JavaScript class, like over and above and separate than this. And if you're interested in, wouldn't be a free thing, it'd be a paid thing. But if you wanted a dedicated JavaScript expert to provide a class for you, you're interested in that, make sure you chime in to our live stream, YouTube, Twitch, or Discord. Let us know that you have interest in that, because we have to let Leland know that there is an interest in the JavaScript class. So I've known Leland on and off. In fact, Leland's, at least in my mind, when I think of Leland, I think of I mentioned this yesterday, the ability in FileMaker to determine if your network connection is having a problem. And so a lot of people say, hey, FileMaker's slow, or FileMaker sucks, right? And they're like, so of course, FileMaker sucks is an extraordinarily technical statement. And the rest of us have to actually do things with that statement, like determine why things are good or why things are bad. And so as a result of that, Leland created a little add-on that allows you to drag and drop, and you can do a test on the performance between your client and your server, for example. And if the numbers are within certain levels, then you're okay. If they're not, then that means your network connection's having an issue, or people on your network are watching too much, Netflix or YouTube or whatever. So, and of course, so the idea is to understand whether it's really a network problem or a FileMaker design problem, etc. So that was what Leland's, our first exposure to Leland. And since that time, he's done some amazing stuff. I got to see him at Pause on Air, him and his wife, wonderful couple. And so he's here today to talk about a bunch of different things he's done, including video games. He built some video games in FileMaker, JavaScript or something. I'm not entirely sure. I have not seen them. So this will be a treat for me as well as everyone else. So Leland, are you there?
I am here. Am I being heard? Excellent.
You are being heard.
All right.
Excellent. So what are we doing today, and why should we care?
Well, FileMaker developers at least in my own experience, when they hear the word JavaScript, it's kind of a mix. I would suppose that you might even define the line between excited and not excited reactions would be based upon age, right? Myself, I'm the only one that's getting older. Everybody else is staying nice and young, I know. But as you get older, maybe the inclination to learn something new, the desire to do that maybe drops a wee bit. So I don't know. It's just been my experience that when you mention the word JavaScript with FileMaker, there's some hesitation, right? Do I really want to learn something that drastically new in order to create FileMaker Solutions? And my argument would be, yes, embrace it. And I'm here to try to show some examples on why you might want to consider it. And number two, hopefully show that at least beginning JavaScript, what I like to call JavaScript 101, is totally feasible.
There you go.
Better?
There you go.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Creating 2 video games in FileMaker. Why make a video game in FileMaker? Well, I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to learning something new, especially the younger that I was, the more interest I had in this, it's fun to make a game in anything. It can be challenging. There's problems that you run into with game development that have to be solved, right? So no matter what language you're learning, the fact that you have a challenge, the fact that you're learning to overcome that, to problem solve, is a skill that will carry forth in anything you do when it comes to coding and even in the FileMaker environment. So it creates problem solving skills. If you're going to learn something new like JavaScript that might feel intimidating, then integrate it with FileMaker. Don't just go out and do maybe JavaScript all by itself, maybe over in the web world, which is where it's been predominantly taught. How about learning it right within inside FileMaker so that you learn the intricacies and some of the problems you run into with just that simple integration. So back in 2014, I actually wrote a book. It's published. It's out there on Amazon. Learn Sprite Kit for iOS Game Development. Now the funny part is I'm not a major gamer, and I'm not a famous game developer. And so it's a story for another time on how I came about to write this book. But I did. It's out there. And it was making the book describes as a tutorial how to build a game from scratch on iOS using Apple's, at the time, new Sprite Kit library. So with that, bringing all of those things together, why make a video game in FileMaker? I hope I've kind of answered that. My first attempt was back in 2007. And the game that I'm about to show you was written, and it kind of looked the same, but it was a wee bit clunky. As you can imagine, FileMaker's kind of changed a wee bit in those 7 years, from 2007 to 2014, let alone now. And so when I decided, hey, let's rewrite this using some JavaScript, it was appealing to go back and readdress that game that I wrote in 2007. So based upon some advice I got from John Sindelar, he was like, you should show this sooner rather than later. So enough chatter. Shall we demo the first one?
Yes, I am very excited to see this.
All right, we'll jump over to FileMaker away from slides, and we will bring out Space Invaders.
Ah, this is cool.
Now, I will just kind of stop just temporarily and just introduce this concept that over in Safari, if you go to pentagon.fm, I have added Space Invaders here as a free download to your amazingly wonderful global audience. So we might have some distractions while people are watching this live stream, but this game is available to anybody and everybody over at pentagon.fm. So with that, let's kind of see what it looks like to play. And by the way, this has sound too, so hopefully the sound comes through. And yes, you're still in FileMaker. And no, that is not a web viewer showing JavaScript code. We're actually utilizing FileMaker elements all the way through, except for the game logic.
This is very cool.
See if I can, oh, well, I got a high score.
I mean, I think it's cool. And I mean, I'm well after the time period of Space Invaders, and I still think that's really cool.
Excellent. All right, somebody asked, is there a boss button in the game? Nope, sorry, no boss on this one. This is old school here. We just have the unending array of enemies attacking you forever until you perish. All right, so back to slides. Throw a web viewer on a layout, call it a JavaScript game? No. we're not going to learn a thing that way, right? There's a million JavaScript games out there made for the web that we could certainly pull into FileMaker that way. But that's just so you get that immediately out of the way, that concern that's not happening here. So what is it we're doing then? A little bit of behind the scenes. Well, FileMaker, first of all, is the entire graphic engine. It's the entire UI. And I do that using calculated container fields. And we'll take a glance at that here in a minute. Game logic, that's where JavaScript enters the picture. And it's the only portion of the picture. It's the entire logic of how the game is operating. JSON is the conduit between FileMaker and JavaScript. That's the data exchange, and that's handled in a couple global variables. And if anybody's not fully aware of the concept out there, JSON is actually an acronym for JavaScript Object Notation. So it originated in JavaScript. It's meant JavaScript deals with it natively. It speaks JSON natively. And so FileMaker's new functions for dealing with JSON is a beautiful marriage made in heaven. It's the perfect fit. I did use one external library here, and that was Jquery. Some of you might have heard of it. And I'm using it exclusively just for the keyboard inputs. When I wrote this game back in 2007, without any JavaScript whatsoever, one of the challenges for making the game in FileMaker was, well, how do I handle keyboard input? I'm not doing data entry here. And so I used the next best thing, which was the command keys for scripts, right? So command 1, 2, and 3, so on and so forth. So again, fairly clunky. Matter of fact, I did some custom menus and changed it to probably command Z and X and slash, but certainly not the optimal way of doing things. Well, the Jquery library brings in keyboard inputs beautifully. There's only one gotcha, and that is a web viewer that's running the JavaScript and the Jquery has to stay in focus, right? So you might have noticed at the bottom of that game, there was a little box and a note that says, if you lose your keyboard controls, you're going to want to click on that box and bring that little web viewer back into focus. Here's what the layout looks like under the hood.
Real
for
quick,
those that are.
Before you go, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
We got a question on YouTube. Minimum FileMaker version.
This uses JSON and JavaScript in a web viewer, so 19 plus.
Got it. Okay.
Anything earlier, your mileage may vary.
So yeah, all you should upgrade to 19. Okay, then one last question.
Yeah.
I'll let you go forward. The download has a .git extension. Is it usable? Can I open it in Windows?
It's a .zip extension, right? It's zipped up. We tried doing just a raw FMP12 file on my GitHub site, and that seems to exhibit some sort of download corruption when we tried doing that. So I zipped it up. So when you unzip that, you should get an FMP12 file in Windows and Mac that will run just fine on your version. Now, I will give you a little disclaimer. This game is beautiful on the Mac OS. On Windows, it's a bit unfortunate. It's not 100% there. I would challenge you as a Windows user to go in and try to debug it and figure out where the problems lie, and let me know what you find. But yeah,
Okay.
it kind of works. It kind of doesn't. I've had very random experiences with attempting that. So
Got it. I'm now going to let you back to get into all the nitty-gritty.
okay, some of the meat and potatoes. Here's the FileMaker layout. You see each row is a separate variable, and it is a repeating field. So yes, I'm using unstored calcs, repeating fields. All of the things that are normally bad for a FileMaker solution are beautiful sometimes for UI problems. So another plug yet again for no, don't make repeating fields go away. They actually have a use and a purpose. Just don't use them for invoice line items, for Pete's sakes. Down at the bottom with the big giant blue arrow pointing at it, there's our web viewer on the layout. So normally it would be blank, but if you look at the detail on the right, that's actually the HTML that's in that web viewer, and you'll notice that there's actually a small table with 3 items. Those are actually buttons for if you attempt to play this in FileMaker Go. So obviously you don't have a keyboard FileMaker Go sitting there on this layout, so I have 3 little makeshift buttons down there in the web viewer that actually give you some sort of input. Again, it's not going to be an iOS App Store knockout. This is not going to earn you fame by any stretch, but it is kind of a fun and a kick project to work with. Here's the relationships. 2 Cartesian joins, basically looking at high scores and graphics with a related to everything mentality. Here's the UI fields that are under the hood for each one of those rows. And you'll notice here that they are repeating fields and unstored calcs. Looking a little deeper at one of the UI fields here. This is where I'll kind of stop and just kind of promote here the notion of, I get kind of irritated as a senior developer in my career choice by looking at some other people's code, and they like using variable names that are very cryptic, to where I cannot pass that code off to a junior developer, let's say, and have them understand what's going on just by looking at it without me fully explaining what it's doing. Us old school developers kind of got used to the idea of variable names like I, X, Y, but I've probably taken on the mentality of Apple when they come to designing functions over in the iOS world, of very long function names and variable names that really describe at a glance what's going on. So you can see here with my variable names, player position X is very self-explanatory. Down at the bottom, player killed flag, and calculation repetition. I like to make it so that when you just read through the calculation, you can kind of figure out what's going on without too much in-depth research on your own terms. Here's the global variables. Again, a JSON variable filled with information that applies to the game logic, but not a whole lot going on there. Again, you should be able to look at those variable names and understand really what's going on. Now we get to JavaScript. Here's just a sample of some JavaScript for this particular game. And what I want you to take away from it is, by glancing at this code, to see that there is nothing complex going on here. There's no promises, there's no asynchronous calls going. I mean, this, I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. I like to call it JavaScript 101. And when you look through this code, even if you've never written a line of JavaScript in your life, if you are a FileMaker developer that has developed for any amount of time, you will notice things like if, switch, case statement. Now a switch is basically, in FileMaker, is a case statement. So you'll see some if statements in there. You'll see some declaration of variables, which for us would be a set variable script step. And of course you see something new there, which is the FileMaker Performscript, which is new in our newest version of FileMaker. But really what I want you to see here is that the entire game logic and everything that was done in JavaScript here was not advanced. This was simple. This is something that if you start to play around in JavaScript, in less than a year, you should be able to write the same thing. And there's lots of advanced JavaScript concepts that you can do that might make things better. But at least for beginning FileMaker developers, beginner JavaScript developers inside the FileMaker platform, you can stay simple, you can learn quickly, and still do amazing things. And I hope to demonstrate that throughout today's presentation.
Very cool stuff. Very, very cool.
Thank you, Richard. Did you happen to see the live demo of the game, or were you pulled away at the last minute?
Pulled away briefly, but I will definitely be watching this and playing this back. I do apologize for that. Yeah. So
quite all right. Quite all right.
No, I want to see the game. Actually, yeah. If you're going to show the game again, or just both games, or just one game? Are you showing both games?
I am showing both. Here's the first one. We'll just quickly go into play mode again. And again, this is not a web viewer. This is unstored calculation, repeating fields on a layout. So with that tiny little web viewer down at the bottom in the blue box.
Wow, impressive.
And we even have sounds. So I'll let myself get slaughtered here so we can make all the noises disappear. And
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Wow.
Okay, so we've showed the layout, we've showed some relationships, we've showed the fields that are involved, we've shown the global variables that are dealing with the JSON data back and forth between the two. We've looked a little bit at the JavaScript code. Now here's the FileMaker scripts. Not a whole lot going on there as far as script count. This main script that's here on the screen called inject HTML, this is the magic of all of it. This is where the sounds are loaded, which are all base 64 encoded. This is where the Jquery library is loaded, which again handles just nothing but keyboard functionality. And here's the HTML that gets rendered in the web viewer. And last but not least, on line 36 there, you can see the actual JavaScript code all lumped together in one small little lump there, and all of that gets populated in the web viewer.
We do have a question here, a couple
Go
questions
ahead.
on you, at least on YouTube. I'm seeing the YouTube stuff, Margaret. So, Mike
those.
Murphy. Oh, did you get those questions? The Get extension one? You get that one too?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well then, shoot, I'll just be quiet now. Sorry about that.
You're good.
By the way, Lynn, I want to welcome Lynn and WJ Warner, Mike, and everyone on YouTube. I'm watching you folks right now. But yeah, no, this is good stuff, and I really like it when you ask questions. And remember, keep in mind, he's kicking around the idea of doing some JavaScript training, and if you're interested in that, definitely you need to let us know, right? So, all right, keep going, Chief.
Okay, so quickly to recap here on this first game, FileMaker is the entire graphical user interface using repeating calculated container fields. JavaScript is nothing but the game engine, the logic behind what's going on as far as who's moving where and why, and what happens when you push this key, what does it do. JSON's the data exchange between the two, between FileMaker and JavaScript. And again, JSON is an acronym for JavaScript Object Notation. So JavaScript natively speaks in JSON, and now FileMaker does too. So that's the medium between the two. And last but not least, Jquery library, a simple JSON library, is used just for the keyboard inputs. So with that, we move on to phase 2 of this presentation, which is go bigger or go home. After writing that game for the second time, but this time in JavaScript, my thought was, okay, well, that was fun. Let's not stop there. That was so nice and responsive. Let's explore how far we can push this concept, and let's see what we can do next. So using a small layout that's only 650 by 1,000, if you can kind of mentally picture that, it's not very big. I decided to throw on 5,000 container fields. Does that sound like fun?
That sounds like it would not work.
Right. Now this is 75 rows of 65 columns. So that gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. And these are all spaced exactly 10 pixels apart, all overlapping, all transparent. So this is one busy layout, no doubt. Now, one of the fun questions I like to ask at this point is, okay, which one of you guys are going to raise your hand here in the class and volunteer to make that layout for me?
Yeah, this is crazy. All right, cool. Keep going.
So at the very end of this list, you'll see a little hint here that each of these containers also has to have a unique name. So not only do you have to space these little boogers in the right spot, but you have to actually give them a unique name all at the same time. So to ease your mind a little bit, it takes me approximately an hour to create this entire layout from scratch. How do I know that? Well, I had to do it a few times. So what I did is Matt Petrowski actually gave me the hint quite a while ago. It's probably been a couple of years now, and he let us know that, hey, if you copy objects on a layout, if you actually go look at the clipboard contents of what you copied, you'll actually see all of the XML, including all the inspector data that goes into every single one of those objects. So because these are all 10 pixels apart, it's easy to calculate exactly where I need the next position of the next object to be, and I know the unique name that is dynamic. But I wrote a script that I would copy just one row of those 75 rows, run this script, and it would generate another 9 rows for me that I would just paste and move on to the screen wherever I needed it to go. So out of that hour, I was running the script, I don't know, 5 to 10 times. And most of that hour was waiting for the script to complete, which was just chunking through that XML, making a whole bunch of new XML, having it on the clipboard that I could paste. So it's a really neat trick.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, this layout was basically created by a script. We got the same 3 tables that we had before that are all Cartesian joined, nothing too amazing and there as far as tables go. Fields, we've got 82 fields, which 75 of them again are calculated repeating fields, 100 reps each. About the same amount of scripts before. We're using the same Jquery library. Here's what the layout looks like. It's a little busy. Again, that's 4,800 containers sitting there in that nice block there. And as far as the web viewer goes, it's hiding down there at the bottom. And again, it's necessary just to stay in focus the entire game so that we have that keyboard input coming to us through JSON.
Got it. Okay, cool.
So none of these fields are editable, and I think that's probably what saves you when it comes to dealing with this layout with that many containers on it. There's nothing editable. So I think that's the saving grace there. Here's what one of the unstored calcs looks like, and it might look kind of busy, but I think the takeaway here is if you look to the far right, all it's doing is each one of these lines is trying to decide whether to show that graphic or a different graphic. It's just a giant case statement, really, is what we're dealing with here.
Okay.
And Richard, one of the things I pointed out before, I don't know if you caught, is I'm a major proponent of variable names and script names that are lengthy, but show you at a glance what's going on so that you can hand it off to a junior developer. And they can kind of figure out what's going on without asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. Some people really hate that. Yeah, I love that. That's why we also do our TO naming that way too. So you can see the name of the relationship and you kind of know how the hell you got there. Yeah. So.
Major proponent of that. Okay, now again, JavaScript. Here's an example of some of the JavaScript in this game. And again, the takeaway I want everyone to take away from here is that this is JavaScript 101. If you have done FileMaker development at any point in your life for any extended period of time, you're going to recognize things on this screen like an if statement. A function is just a subscript. And other than that, you see a lot of variable declarations, which for us would be set variable. So again, this is JavaScript 101. This is not complicated JavaScript at all. All right.
Okay.
With that, who wants to see it?
Yeah, right. What is it? What is this? I don't think I've seen this one.
No, you have not. Who was with you at Pause that came to my class?
Calvin Moseyman. Calvin was.
Calvin. Is Calvin here today?
Well, he's probably actually working on a customer project. So yeah.
Okay.
I can only have so many of the engineers doing live streams at one time, but yes.
That's right. Okay, so right before I click proceed with caution, I will let you know that hopefully based upon our internet speed and everything, that hopefully this looks really fluid to you. If for any reason what you're about to see looks choppy at all, blame it on the internet, because I promise you when you have this on a machine in front of you, there's no stuttering, there's no hesitation. It's amazing to me that with all of this work going on as far as all of these containers, these all being unstored calcs, it's amazing to me where we've gotten with FileMaker on today's machines that makes this possible. So with that, how about we introduce Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde?
No way.
Now, it was funny when you were talking on a previous episode on that pause on error reflection, how you were saying, oh, somebody needs to make a Miss Pac-Man add-on.
I want to put Pac-Man as a hidden Easter egg in the new starting point. We have the new starting point will be coming out, and I would love to put that in there as an Easter egg. Well, you have to find out how much it's going to cost me to do that, right? So, yeah.
Right. So I'm going to hit Command minus. Our resolution's a little small here. Hopefully that doesn't change too much, but now that we've dropped the magnification down a bit, I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but let's hit the play button. Now this little progress button, that is simply because it takes a while for FileMaker to load that layout.
Holy shit. Are you fucking serious? I can't say fucking on TV.
Oh, yeah, you didn't say that. It'll probably be that later, right?
Do we have any audio with this? Or
we don't have audio yet. This is not finished yet, so sound is not included yet.
How many levels have you programmed in here?
Well, again, Pac-Man only had really one level, right? It just kind of gently sped up over time.
Because Mrs. Pac-Man had different designs, and you had the little intermissions and stuff. So
we don't have collisions. We don't have collisions.
Like, you went right through there.
This is superhero mode right here. Yeah, there's no collisions yet. Yeah, I don't have a lot of things finished yet.
Well, this is the best kind of Pac-Man. You can't die.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Does anyone want to take a JavaScript class from this guy? Does anyone want to do that? And it's not going to be free. You have to pay for it, but it won't be $1 billion either.
No, I've heard a couple people before that this happened that they wanted to do that.
They probably want to take a JavaScript guy from a class where Pac-Man actually has object collision, right? See, you know.
That's right.
That's insane. I can't believe that it's not. Yeah. Okay.
You know, we'll have to change the name to Pac Brad though, right? As in the Brad Freitag, because Pac-Man is a trademark thing, so we have to call it Pac Brad, right? So, I don't even know what the legalities of even sticking this as an Easter egg in the product would be. I mean, because clearly the design
the product is free, so since you're not making any money off of it.
Well, that always helps.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
that
Right.
is
Yeah.
that does help.
If you don't charge for it, then yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Wow. So
Now, as a developer, whether of games or a FileMaker, one of the things that I'll point out two things here on this particular game for you to chew on and think about, because it really makes your mind expand as far as problem solving skills, regardless of what kind of problem you're trying to solve. How did I finally solve the problem of walls and pellets?
yeah,
Because as you saw with the way that the layout is of all the containers, there's a lot more containers on here that are actually being used. And I will give you a little hint that the background image that you see, that the blue walls right here, that's a background image. It's not actually drawn in the containers. The containers only hold the pellets, the blinking pellets, and the characters.
and the ghosts. Okay, characters. Wow.
So other than that, it is a the backdrop is lovely, but on a black screen. Or
Okay.
yeah. So
Wow.
So with that, we will hit Q for quit and jump back over to slides. All right. So there's our graphics table.
I haven't been blown away in a while. I was just blown. I've been blown. I don't know what to say, dude. Anyone else blown away? I mean, I'm looking at YouTube. Anyone there? Lynn says buzz training, yes please. Michelle says incredible. Pac-Man Easter egg please. WJ says yes. Stick it in starting point. Okay, well, it's up to Leland. I will if he lets me. So there you go. All right. All right, keep going.
All right. So here is a little hint on how I solved the pellet problem, which is I used a bitmap. I used a table that holds, you can see each one of the rows. That's a record. And it is repeating fields, but it's a bitmap. So you have a 0 where there's not a pellet, and you have a 1 where there is a pellet. And I use two records. One that's the template, right, for starting over again to have them all there. And the second one is the player record, so that as he gobbles them up, the ones change to a 0. So that's how I solved the pellet problem. That was a bit of a challenge there for a bit. Is like, what's the best way to handle this, right? It's always your problem solving challenge. There might be 10 ways to do it. What's the best way to do it? It's not quite finished yet. On my previous Mac, it was starting to feel a little bit sluggish, getting more and more graphical options out there on the screen, especially after I added the flashing power pellets.
So do me a favor. Tell me what kind of computer was the previous computer, like
6-year-old Mac laptop.
So like a 2014 kind of model. Okay, and then
what am I on now today?
Yeah.
Well, I'm spoiled. This is one of the new M1 Pros.
Oh, you have an M1 Pro, but what? Okay. Yeah. Well, but if you have like a regular M1, right? Would it work okay?
Oh yeah, it worked great on the 2016 machine. It worked great. Okay. It was just as soon as I put the power pellets in there, I could actually start to see the frame rate drop just a tad to where it was like, oh, I'm just barely noticing it. So it was still very tolerable.
Okay.
Need some collision handlers yet. Don't have any.
What about Windows? Does it work on Windows? I hate to ask the question.
Well, yeah, we kind of covered this on Space Invaders. Your mileage may vary. Yeah, your mileage might vary on Windows. Now, it's a heck of a lot better with the current version of Windows FileMaker with the move away from Internet Explorer. Yeah, that helps things tremendously, but it's still not 100% fix. Mostly your issue is refresh. As you can imagine, with 5,000 containers on the screen, refresh is expensive. So the way I've always handled that on both games is that, as with traditional animation, all you're doing is displaying an object on the screen, then you're erasing that object in that exact position, you're calculating the new position, and then you're redrawing it. So I'm only refreshing those two each animation cycle, right? Where it was and where it is now. So with 5 characters moving on the screen and blinking pellets, you don't have too bad of a refresh issue. You can get that 30 frames a second that looks nice and smooth, as long as you keep the amount of things that are moving down to a minimum.
Wow.
So yeah, we still need some cutscenes. We need some level handlers. We need fruit. We need lots of things on here.
Oh, that's right. We don't have any fruit yet.
Right.
Before we move on to the next one, though, we do have a question.
Go ahead.
From Mr. Rubin. I think I missed the point where the JavaScript is manipulating the JSON. Is that a text file on disk with the JSON? This is about the previous demo.
This is Space Invaders. It's all I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly. It's the JavaScript is sitting in in that one script on line, 36 on inject HTML, and it's a single line of JavaScript, which when you open it is, many lines of code, but it's single script step that's handling the insertion of that into the web viewer.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
I don't know if that answered the question for Ruben, because Ruben was asking more specifically about the JSON.
Okay, now here's the, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, because I'm talking about JavaScript, aren't I?
Yes.
That's handled here in the scripts. Okay, JSON right here, those are global variables. Okay. So I have like one or two global variables. This one here on the screen currently is the one that handles the enemies for the Space Invaders. So you can kind of see by glancing through there, you have, it's an array. So there's a separate, array indexed item for each enemy, and there's 5 there. And then for each one, you see a position X, a position Y, a previous position, where the bullets are, if there are any, whether it's killed or not. So yeah, so JSON totally handles the entire communication between JavaScript and FileMaker. So It's manipulated in the JavaScript, and then it's passed over to FileMaker through a global variable. And then the calculated container fields read that JSON to determine what gets drawn where.
Okay.
I'm amazed. This is being Pac-Man. I mean, I've seen stuff like that, but I have never seen a game in containers that smooth before. That was off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
And Ruben said that answered his question.
We'll have to call Pac-Brad, right? So that'd be funny. All right.
Was there any more questions?
No, there is kind of one thing, but we'll talk about it at the end of the thing. There's some problem with the download from Pentagon FM, but that can be addressed at the end.
The .git. What's a .git? What is that?
It's GitHub. It's
GitHub, but it should be a zip file.
It's not.
I tested location.
I tested it. It's I opened it up in GitHub and it won't let me access the FMP or zip or anything.
Wow. Well, someone will have an answer for that. How do we open a .git? Yeah.
Try this. Go to Leland Long's account on GitHub, and I can post a link a little later if you want to find that while we continue the presentation.
You are free to go. I'll go hunting.
Yeah, try downloading it from that and see if we have more luck. Okay, so let's fast forward to today with, again, I'm a in-house FileMaker developer. And obviously I create business solutions all day long, not games. So been a FileMaker developer for a very long time, since FileMaker 2. I did skip versions 4, 5, and 6. I jumped from version 3 to 7, but I've been a constant developer since version 8. So with that, we run into business challenges all of the time, and one of them that's been plaguing me for quite some time is this Google Doc that our staff uses. And I created a solution a couple of years ago that used execute SQL for a data pull, and I used virtual list for presentation, and they had all kinds of custom requests, and I fulfilled every single one of them. We got to beta testing phase, and they thought it was nice. I got the handshake, the pat on the back. Yeah, it looks great, feels great, but we can't use it. And for one single reason, it was too dang slow. When you would hit refresh, you would sometimes wait 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe even 45 seconds for the thing to refresh. And so it was a pain point that there was just no overcoming. So we had to walk away from that. Well, enter JavaScript, right? JavaScript kind of opens up some avenues, and it led me to think that maybe I could take a look at this previous pain point and try it again. So to explain a little bit of what you're seeing here on the screen, this is a Google Doc that somebody invented here in our industry. I work with a flooring company, and we manage subcontractors. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of names, and each of those names is a flooring crew that we manage. And you see the purple line that's going all the way across, approximately halfway down. That's a divider between surface types. So we have soft flooring surface and hard flooring surface. And the dates across the top are the dates of September 27, 28, 29, and 30. So when Zulu first came out, if you guys are familiar with that plugin that came out quite a few years ago, which allowed FileMaker to integrate with iCal, yes. I got all excited. All excited.
Yep.
Purchased it, built the solution.
We use it at RCC. We use Zulu. Yeah,
nice. So I integrated that and I showed it off to staff, and I thought I was going to get all kinds of accolades because there on iCal was their scheduled jobs for the week. And they could see the codes that you see here in front of you that are all custom. And when they clicked on it, I even had a link back to the invoice using the FMP protocol, so that when they clicked on their iCal link, it would open up FileMaker and bring up that invoice. It was
they should have given you an award for that. What happened?
That's right. Darn right. I agree completely. Well, the problem is that they kind of nodded and said, okay, yeah, that's interesting, but it wasn't useful. And the reason being is that a calendar view for what they were trying to solve was not helpful. It did not help them at all to see a list of jobs for the day or for the week, because they needed this spreadsheet-like mentality of across the left, or going down the left-hand side, they needed their individual crews separated by surface type. And you really can't do that well in a calendar. Each cell row has to do with a week, and the column has to do with days of the week, right?
Right.
So this is their solution. This is what they have been using for years, and it's more of a spreadsheet, not a calendar. So that's the ultimate challenge as far as how to do this in FileMaker and how to do it well. So what I decided to do is my project manager loves Jira, and Jira is based on the Kanban board. So with FileMaker, what was it, 18 or 19 coming out with add-ons, and Kanban board being one of them, that was one of the first things I went and played with. Okay. And it worked kind of well. I mean, it doesn't exactly mimic a spreadsheet by any stretch, but it had kind of a nice look and feel, and it felt like maybe it might be a good starting point. Well, I did a little bit more looking at Kanban boards and stumbled across Soliant's Carafe.fm, which is a free service that they offer. And they have this particular Kanban board, which is different than the FileMaker add-on template. And this one had a few more things that I liked about it. And so what I did is I decided this is what I'll use for a starting point to see what I can do as far as making this spreadsheet. And here's what it started looking like after working with it a little while. And again, this is using an existing JavaScript library integrated into FileMaker fairly quickly. And it was me going in and spending a lot of time and effort under the hood, looking at the JavaScript code, looking at the settings, trying to figure out how to massage this thing into doing what I needed it to do, rather than what it did out of the box. So one of the things you'll notice here is the height of each cell being identical. And that was the most important, because it needed to look more like a spreadsheet. And that's not native. It was expanding and collapsing each cell based upon its content. So I didn't need that. So that was one of the big things we had to change. Before I get to that, let me jump over and show you live in FileMaker, connected via WAN to our server in Atlanta, what that thing looks like today. And I'm going to have to close it and reopen it since we did a resolution change. It's hidden the top of my window clear off the top of the screen, so I can't do it. Let's go. Am I in the right database? No, I'm not. Don't tell me I closed it. Nope, there it is. Good. All right. Kanban, where are you? There you are. Okay, so here's what it looks like today. And it's busy populating data. There we go. Okay, so let's kind of dissect this a little bit. So this is live data in our current solution. Now, this is not a finished product. This is still in the middle of development, but I've already gotten off to a really nice start, to the point where we at least did a proof of concept demo to staff quite a while ago. It's got nice scrolling capabilities. It looks nice. I've kind of changed it over the time to make it so that the window width is dynamic, so it'll actually do some nice things like that. And you'll see that I have the cell height trying to be consistent, but we do have a problem when we come down here. I allowed for 3 items in a cell, and this one's trying to squeeze in 5, so it's broken what I've done, and now it's not lining up correctly. So that's one of the things I'm going to have to fix.
Well, that means that you have to fix all of them across once you have one person that violates it. You have to figure out the violation height and then get them all to violate the same together. Wow, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. So some features that we've got built in, if I click on an empty cell, it fills it with this person wants this time off. And if I click in the same cell again, it changes to a buffer, which means something different to staff. And if I click in the same cell again, it goes back to empty. If I click on a cell that already has a job in there, it actually shows some invoice data from our main CRM. And if it's got 2 jobs in the day, then it does the same thing but shows 2 side by side. And again, that's 2 FileMaker records side by side. And if we have 3, it does the same thing. Now, again, that little delay that you see there is a fresh data API call to pull fresh data from the CRM.
Okay, stop for a second. So
Go
this
ahead.
CRM is FileMaker. Is this the CRM backend FileMaker? And then these are 3 records. This looks like a card style window in FileMaker, or is this a web viewer? Or is it both?
This is a card window, and those are global fields on a layout.
Okay,
so you
found you found the related records, then you load the data into the globals, and then you display the card. Okay, great.
And that's a live link. If I click on one of these, it actually brings up that particular invoice that everybody sees every day.
Very, very nice. Very, very nice.
And let's see what some other features we got going on in here. We got those. Oh, one of the arguments I'm always getting as I develop over the years is I don't like that color, right? Do you ever run into that?
Well, some businesses don't care, and some businesses have this like the artistic mentality, kind of like Nick Hunter, and they're offended if your Pantone color is off by a smidge, right? Like
well, you can see what I'm working. You can see the staff that I'm working with here, their color choices. It's kind of a hodgepodge, right? Just grab the crayon box and throw something in there. Well, I like to give them more than what they're expecting. And since this is all CSS, this is all a web viewer, by the way, in case I didn't say that. One of the things that you can play with is, quickly changing color schemes with some CSS tricks. So it's nice, fast, and responsive. And now you give them options. Now they can pick a preference and stick with it, right?
Oh, okay.
So another problem that we were running into, especially since they're going to want probably another 2 columns here, is that as you deal with screen real estate, different computers, different screens, different users, right? I can't quite see that. I need a bigger screen, all of those arguments. So with that, it was like, well, let's just make some dynamic font sizes too. So again, CSS tricks, which is something that'll be nice that we might have in FileMaker natively someday, right? Maybe.
I don't know. I think there's I think that we're in a big transitional state. We'll have to see what they do with 20. But we'll see more of that later this month. Robert Halsey has a live stream or webinar. I think he's going to start showing 20, would be my impression. So
right. That'll be nice.
Cool.
So what we've got here, again, is proof of concept. There's still some development work going on. But one of the things I want to point out is when I hit this refresh button. Top center, you saw a status going on there. And that total load time was, less than 3 seconds. Well, here's the good and the bad news. The bad news is that when I did this proof of concept and I had moved away from beta testing data to live data to the CRM, my load time was 15 to 40 seconds again after building this. So I was a bit disheartened. Went away from that meeting going, well, crap. I mean, this was using the FileMaker Data API. This was using a JavaScript library. But what all of that, I'll cover here in a minute where the bottleneck was, but it was unusable. At this point, when I left the proof of concept, it was like, nope, sorry, we're going to scrap that. It's too slow. There's no way we can sell that to staff. There's no way.
Right.
They're on a phone with a customer. They're trying to schedule something. They're here looking for an empty black box, an empty white box to put a scheduled date in, and they have to see. And this only shows a week at a time. What happens when they click the next arrow to look at the next week? Do they have to wait another 45 seconds while they're on the phone with a customer? It's a no sale. It was dead in the water until I went home and thought, wait a minute. Here's what's going on. On the left-hand side of this slide is the data we get back from the FileMaker Data API. And it's JSON, and it's lovely, and it's great, and it's doing everything that we want. The problem is this middle column is how I need the data represented for this Kanban board to function correctly, to do all of its magic. And the difference between the left side and the right and the center is dramatically different. It's a lot of the same data, but it has to be formatted in a completely different type of JSON body, right? So that's the pain point.
Okay.
The column on the right is the finished HTML. If you look at a specific title here, you'll see the div style and the white space, no wrap. That's the actual rendered HTML data for the actual Kanban board on the screen. Now, the conversion from the center column to the right is nice and fast in FileMaker. It's fine. I don't have a problem there. The problem is the conversion from the left hand to the center was where all of the time was happening. My return of data through the data API was nice and fast, 1 or 2 seconds, right? Even over a WAN. I'm getting back, 50 records. It's fast. No problem there. The problem was the conversion. In FileMaker, I had built it twice, trying to make it efficient. I had done it a second time, and it was working beautifully. It did everything it needed to do, but it was taking too dang long. So it was a no-go. So when I went home that night, it was like, what about what I did for the 2 games? I wrote in a middleman, you could say, that handled all of the game logic in JavaScript. Right? Now, if you looked at my scripts that I was doing for this conversion from the left column to the right to the center, it was all memory management. It was all set variables and loops. There was no FileMaker context. There was no layouts. There was no relationships. There was no unstored calcs. It was pure set variable and loops and ifs, right? So it was already very efficient as far as all of the things that would normally slow you down in a FileMaker solution. They were gone. They were a moot point. That was not the problem. The problem was the drastic conversion between the 2 different bodies of JSON. So what if I took just that portion and I moved it off to JavaScript? I did in today's solution now, loads, when I hit refresh, even over a WAM. You can see the looking for jobs. That's the data API. This one's taking a little longer now. Our internet connection here must be a little slower. This was a lot faster earlier, right?
Yeah, and it's running a backup too, probably, or whatever else. Yeah,
could be. Yeah, 5 o'clock. And then if you saw the processing jobs, that's now lickety split fast, and that used to be 30 to 45 seconds. So what I did is line by line is I converted the existing FileMaker script that had all of my logic as far as what needed to happen, and line by line I converted it to JavaScript, and it went from 40 seconds to 4. So I got a 10-fold speed increase.
That is a compelling reason to absolutely endorse and embrace a new technology, that kind of performance improvement. So for the people out there like, I don't want to do this, I want to poo-poo that idea. If I wasn't busy running around managing people and doing what I do and all the live streams and stuff, I would be neck deep in coding this stuff. It would be a tremendous amount of fun and learning something new too.
So here was one of those scripts that was handling a lot of that work. And if you just kind of glance through it, set variable, perform subscript. There's no FileMaker context. There's no layouts. There's no related tables. There's no fields. It's just manipulating data that's already in memory in a variable.
So when this JavaScript runs, so this is the old one here we're looking at. So it would run in FileMaker. When the new one runs, it's running in a web viewer in FileMaker?
Well, this is already a web viewer, right? The entire solution is a web viewer. So yeah, I'm telling it to run a specific JavaScript function that I created. And then it returns the results in, yep, you guessed it, a global variable.
Right. Perfect.
Now it is async, right? That is one of the catches with dealing with JavaScript, is that your FileMaker script wants to just continue running, right? It's kind of like
so let's talk
on
about
server.
This real quick. So let's talk about this for everyone basic. So we're talking about synchronous actions versus unsynchronous. So if you're a brand new FileMaker developer, you're beginning or maybe to the intermediate stage, everything in your head happens in a linear sequence. You get up in the morning, you put your clothes on, or you take a shower, put your clothes on, go to breakfast, go to work. Everything is a linear experience. But what if you got up in the morning and you could, do 3 things in parallel, right? You eat and take a shower and put your clothes on at the same time, right? You have to worry about what might get done first, right? Because if you want to put your clothes on, if your clothes end up coming on your body before you get in the shower, then you've got wet clothes. That's a problem. It's what we're talking about, asynchronous, right? It's this multi-threaded, multi-processor world that we live in, right? So anyway, I'm just trying to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about. That's why FileMaker, most of everything we do in FileMaker is very synchronous, very, very, very synchronous, right?
One script step at a time, right?
Right.
Finish this script step, go to the next one.
Very few things in the world in FileMaker are asynchronous. In Pro, the only thing in FileMaker Pro, the client on your machine that is asynchronous is if you are flipping through a records and you have a portal, and that portal has a lot of related records in it, and you tell it to sort. FileMaker, they made the effort to separate that as an asynchronous process. You'll see a little clock come up and it'll start spinning to display that portal of information. That's one of the few things that's actually asynchronous, right? So, but FileMaker Pro largely is first out the door, is the first one that ends, right? Or that kind of very sequentially. You can't jump ahead. So how did you handle the asynchronous part on your code on your application?
Right. There's a couple ways of doing it, and the one that I chose is really old-fashioned FileMaker. So what I do is before I run that code, I create a global variable that's empty. Then I just start a timed loop, run every 1/10 of a second, and look for that variable to have something in it, to not be empty. And then the JavaScript runs, it does its thing, and when it's done, it passes data back into that global, and voila, the script continues.
Now, they added the asynchronous timing stuff in one of the later versions of FileMaker, 9.3 or 9.2.1 or whatever it was. Remember the options? Are you familiar with these, right? So when you're calling a JavaScript call, you can actually tell your existing FileMaker script to pause or wait or do whatever, like 4 or 5 different options. Do you remember that? So
yeah.
So yeah, but you built this before that. You built this before that. When did you?
Well, not really. It's just that I think I ran into the async problem on the game development as well, and so there was kind of some gotchas that I kind of learned through there, and yeah, because sometimes you need to completely interrupt a script to return a new script that's coming in. Yeah.
Correct. So Claire, this is a fairly recent addition to the FileMaker platform over the last, I would say, 6 or 8 months. Maybe it's been a year, but it's fairly recent that they've added these options. So when you call JavaScript, you can put the current script can wait for it to complete. It can continue on its merry way. It can halt. It can do a bunch of different stuff. So there's like 4 or 5 options on that. But that's interesting where you would run into that. So this is a fascinating conversation. We don't have to stop immediately, but we are coming towards the end of the hour-long assignment. We have questions from people, Margaret? Where are we at with questions?
I don't see anything on Twitch or YouTube. People on Discord are saying it's really cool. Oh, here's one. I'm curious if you explored any JSON to JSON transformations such as JSON ATA.
No, I did not.
Okay.
There you go. Beyond that, I don't really see any
questions.
And
of course, now you made me curious. I'm going to have to go check that out after the session now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You always run into stuff where you always run into situations where you could I love my cats, but it's an old term. You could skin a cat a bunch of different ways. You can get to the end. You can solve the problem, especially with FileMaker, probably 6 different ways. Half of those ways of solving it could be very slow, and so you're always looking for the secret nugget that makes it go fast, which is what Leland has discovered in his work. And anytime you're in the business of your gaming business, you can learn from everything you do. You learn from it. I think it's very valuable.
Now over on Pentagon.fm, not only do I have Space Invaders, not only do I have the what's my latency plugin that you talked about earlier at the beginning of the show, I also have 2 solutions that are both JSON problems that I ran into at work. Needed a solution for, FileMaker was too slow at, so I created a JavaScript add-on that would solve those problems for me. The first one is a sorting of a JSON body. So we do a lot of API call to vendors, and we get back huge amounts of JSON data. And one of them that we notoriously get back is a list of notes that have been created on the vendor side that we want to import into our solution, but they come in unsorted. Right? Now it's useless for us to have notes out of order because the context of the note is usually what's going on with the customer, so you need them to be in date and time order, right? Well, how does a FileMaker developer typically solve that problem? Well, as a FileMaker developer, you usually think, okay, I'll import that JSON data into a temp table. I'll have FileMaker do the work of sorting it. Yep. Then I'll come back and I'll return and I'll continue with my process flow. Well, that's all well and good, but that's extra table, that's extra scripts, that's extra fields, that's extra all of that. Why not do it in JavaScript, right? So I did that, and it is so fast. And not only is it fast, but then I made it with the add-on that you can download called JSON Sort Array, I believe is what it's called over on Pentagon.fm. Is you can tell it the path of the JSON element you want to sort by. So no matter how deeply it's buried in a JSON return element, you don't just sort by the root level. You can sort by anything. So all the way down into the note date created field is what I wanted to sort by.
Mm.
So you give it, the path of how to find that, and then you can pick the field type. You can sort by date, sort by alphanumeric, sort by number, sort by, you tell it how you want to sort, and then ascend and descend. And it is amazing how fast that is, even with huge amounts of JSON data that we were getting back. So that's one add-on that's available. And the other one is a JSON diff, which takes 2 JSON results and returns you back what the differences are.
Ah, okay.
So we get, on one particular vendor that we deal with, we get back way more information we would ever need, and it's huge. And then they'll tell us, oh, we made a change, but they're not nice enough to tell us what the change is. We have to determine what the change is. So I throw in both, and it gives me back just what changed. So very, very useful. But those, both of those are add-ons.
We have
all
not
of them
talked
JavaScript solutions.
We have not talked about Pentagon FM too much, so I don't know, at some point maybe we should do a tour of that. I mean, not this moment, we're running out of time, but those who've not seen, I wasn't even aware of Pentagon FM until Leland told me about it. And it's where kind of this alternate marketplace for add-ons and other FileMaker stuff. And so interesting, right? So.
And you've had a few comments here in the live stream I see about my add-on that I made available to everybody called Matrix Digital Rain. If you're a fan of the Matrix movie series, you should know at the intro what the digital rain is. So this is a way to quickly throw it into your FileMaker solution. I have it as an Easter egg in our main system, and I get a Teams notification every time somebody discovers that Easter egg and triggers it at the workplace. So that's kind of fun.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking about, the pack Brad thing or whatever, right? Yeah, that would be fun. Right. So to show people how awesome the FileMaker platform actually is. So cool. Well, for those of you who are interested in Leland, he's got a good presence, he's got a good voice, he's got a good attitude. I think I would personally love to take a JavaScript class from him. So think about that. If you want to also shoot us an email, folks, at like, what would you like to see? How many. What would you like to learn in a JavaScript class? From the beginning, basics to intermediate. What would you like to see? Think about the amount of time. If you did an hour a day or 2 hours a day, or what that might look like. How or would you just want to do like some courses are like all day, every day, for like a week. And I don't know how people can learn that much. After about 90 minutes, my brain starts to get full, right? If that makes any sense. So I hate having 8 hours of training, because after about 6 hours, I'm not catching any of it. So
brutal.
Yeah, but
if you're in the headlights, look.
Yeah, if you broke it out in chunks every day, once again, not necessarily part of our live stream here, because learning JavaScript by itself, that would be a separate exercise. So, Leland, anything else you want to let us know about today?
Well, shucks. No, we covered both of the games. Those are fun projects. We got the business solution out there from a Kanban board. We've got Pentagon.fm with some useful JSON manipulation add-ons out there, and some fun eye candy and entertainment value. I think that's about all I've got for you at the moment.
Okay. Cool. I have one last question that I'm going to shuffle off before we leave. Okay. Mike wants to know what your text editor of choice is for Mac.
I use TextEdit itself a lot when it comes to copying and pasting stuff between like JSON results and whatnot. For coding, I tend to use Atom, which is made by GitHub, and Xcode. I've started exploring a little bit with Visual Studio, but I'm no expert. I'm very much a newbie in that world, but we'll probably start using that a little bit more.
The text editor that Jacob and I use, which is probably not to Leland's level, is Sublime, as a fun one. So that's a good one for seeing things. It's a kind of more of a shareware pricing model, but it's decent, but not as deep, obviously, as Xcode or some of these other things. So
there is one more thing, Richard, that one more thing that you just reminded me of. I won't go back to screen share, but if you recall looking at that slide where I was kind of showing a little bit of the scripts, you'll notice that I inserted the JavaScript and the HTML and the sound effects and everything. Instead of set variable, I used insert text. Did you notice? Did you happen to catch that?
I did not catch that.
Does anybody curious to know why?
Let me guess. Is it about twice as fast or something?
Well, what's the biggest pain point for dealing with text inside of a calc engine or a set variable, anything to deal with text one of your biggest things that you run into on the web that doesn't translate really well in FileMaker in those areas is the double quotes.
I was going to say the encoding, yeah. So
the encoding, yeah. So it's the astronomical amount of double quotes that you have to escape correctly, right, in order to paste a very large section of JavaScript into code. So a trick that I learned from somebody else, I don't know where, is the insert text script step. You can paste raw text in there with double quotes. You don't have to escape anything, so it becomes very readable. You can see it. All you have to do is make that window as big as you want, right, to see as much content as you want in one field. And no escaping. So it's brilliant.
Wow. Once again, another hot tip.
One gotcha is that FileMaker has some sort of built-in character limit. I think it's around 30,000 characters. So when you paste in something like the Jquery library, I have to split it up into multiple insert text and then combine them at the end.
That sounds about right. I think it is 32K on a copy paste on a lot of things. It depends on the platform and the field and things like that. Cool. Well, I don't have anything more. Tomorrow's going to be kind of an open conversation about Q&A on certification tests and some topics and ideas and things to be aware of, mostly focused on kind of the server side of the certification tests. People asked me about that. So we're going to kind of rehash some of that tomorrow. It'll be fun. Once again, just to try to give people a little bit of a steer of where they need to be thinking and notes they need to make about server-related stuff prior to going into the certification test. Good topic if you're not certified or you need to be. Anything else? We're good, Margaret?
I think we are good.
Leland, super awesome job. Thank you very much.
Absolutely fun to be with you today.
Thank you so much for coming. All right.
Just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snaps a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.